Welcome, everybody. Welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome, fellow dregs to society. Welcome, fellow rock dwellers. Welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network. And joining me in a pinch today, since Dr. Nasser Sheikh is under the weather, is the patriot from the battle-born state, the Silver State of Nevada. That's my very dear friend, Sharon Angle. Sharon, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thank you, Rick, and it's a great pleasure to pinch hit for Nasser. You know, every time we're on, you say, so what's on your radar, Sharon? And I always kind of go looking out there to see what's in the news. It's always entertaining, I guess, to find out what people think is newsworthy. And of course, the Drudge Report is one of my go-to places because he has some of the oddest news sometimes. I guess some of the more entertaining things, like today, he's entertaining us with Joe Biden. It turns out that his wife, Mrs. Joe Biden, is just as big a kisser as Joe. So, you know, it just runs in the family. Don't hold it against Joe. He doesn't mean anything by it. That's just the way they are in the Biden family. It's kind of interesting. He is blaming, though, Bernie for making
blaming Bernie.
Yeah, he says it's Bernie that started making him sound like he was creepy. He's the one spreading these rumors, and so it's kind of interesting to see, you know, that he even sees that we think that's kind of creepy behavior, and he says, no, it's all Bernie's fault that he's looking creepy now to the American public.
Well, I didn't think it was Bernie. I thought it was a couple of Democrat women that came forward telling their stories about being smooched upon by Joe Biden. And, you know, Sharon, I did see one of the videos of him coming up behind a lady, grabbing her shoulders and starting to kiss her on the back of her head. And I'm thinking, that looks strange. That really looks funny. It almost looks like a grandparent doing something similar to a granddaughter, you know, coming behind and grabbing her and kissing her on the head. I mean, but it's creepy. It's really creepy that it's Joe Biden doing. I mean, these aren't his relatives. These aren't his granddaughters.
So I can't wait for Trump to start calling him Creepy Joe.
Well, we'll start. Maybe Trump will.
Maybe he'll pick it up from Creepy Joe from Conservative Commandos radio show to the president's ears. Huh? Well, you know, when you look at these Democrats, though, that are running, it is kind of interesting because now we have this new fellow jumping in, the mayor of South Bend. We kind of talked a little bit about Pete Buttigieg, and he's going to Hollywood. He's going to go and get that Hollywood money now. This 37-year-old Rhodes Scholar that served in the military and adds to his resume by saying he got married last year. I think it's only 6 months, his marriage, to his husband. So they're now on their way to Hollywood to get that Hollywood money. He raised $7 million and he wants more. And he's going to need more because guess what? Bernie Sanders has $28 million in his campaign coffer. So, I mean, this thing is just revving up.
Mm-hmm. That surprises me a little bit that Bernie has been able to get this much money, and I'll tell you why. You would think the Bernie Sanders supporters would have learned a lesson in the last election when Bernie got the shaft by the Democrat Party. He had no chance of winning that. That nomination was in the bag for Hillary Clinton. Okay, the deal was made between her campaign and the DNC to give her the nomination. All the work, all the time, all the money, all the support that Bernie got from his followers, God bless them, they got burnt. All right, they got burnt. They got burnt by the Democrat Party. So when you know these T-shirts, and Actually, somebody gave me one. I feel the burn. They got burned, all right. They got burned by the Democrat Party. So I'm surprised. I'm surprised that his supporters were out there again, filling his coffers. You know, then the other thing is, what got me is after the election, what he did, bought himself a $600,000 lake house. You know, I didn't think socialists like Bernie wanted property. I don't know. Maybe he's going to start a commune there right on the shores of Lake Champlain in Vermont. Maybe that's why he bought himself this big, lavish lakefront home. He's going to start a commune and invite everybody in. Who knows?
Well, you know, they're all about sharing the wealth until it becomes their wealth. And then they buy a lake house. So that's the way that goes. But, you know, it gets crazier on the left. It seems like we're not the only country that's suffering from this crazy left bunch. There's a bunch of protesters against Brexit, and they think this is a good protest. Now, I'm not sure how I would take this, but they all showed up naked. You know, some people need to wear clothes, Rick. That's just my opinion. So a naked protest, I'm not sure that works.
How do I ask this question? I agree with you, Sharon. I mean, Sharon Angle, have you ever been on a nude beach?
No, never have.
That doesn't surprise me that you haven't, but I have. I've been on a couple of them, and by and large, I think there's very good reason that there are laws making people wear clothes. It sounds salacious. Nude beaches, nude protests sounds salacious, but it's not that pretty of a sight. I mean, Sharon, by and large, these people are not the Hollywood models, okay, that a lot of people would think they would want to see naked and nude. I mean, a lot of these people are overweight or flabby, have skin hanging. It's not a very beer bellies. It's not a very pretty picture. Sharon, there are reasons why clothing needs to be mandatory. I wouldn't want to go see a nude demonstration. I really wouldn't. You know, I've seen demonstrations. For instance, I was in Washington for President Trump's inaugural. I saw the protesters down there. I don't even want to think about them not wearing clothes. It like not a pretty sight at all.
Well, I'm thinking about England and Parliament, London. London is not the warmest place. In fact, I was in Scotland, and there was a fellow bragging that he had gone to Australia and got his very first sunburn because they just don't even wear shorts there. It's just too chilly. So, I'm thinking about this naked protest in Parliament, and these poor people.
I don't want to think about
freezing.
it. I don't. Farthest thing from my mind is this naked protest in England. I don't want to think about it. Interesting hearing about it, but
it's ugly. It's just
please erase that image from my mind.
Well, you know, we've said that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar are comic relief for us here on Conservative Commandos radio show. But, you know, the left, just in general, they just keep on giving. If they call us, what do they call us? You keep saying that as you open the show, all those things.
Deplorables, dregs to society, rock dwellers. What did Joe Biden said, you know, people, white man's guilt, you know, I mean, every day they come out with something new, something else to call us. All right. And yet they're the loving, compassionate side. You know, we're the homophobes. We're the race mongers. We're the racist. but they keep giving us, they're the ones that keep giving us these names.
Well, I keep reminding myself of what my mother used to say. If there's one finger pointing forward at you, there's three coming back, that it takes one to know one. And,
yes.
And often they're accusing you not of what you're doing, but exactly what they're doing. So when we see this craziness on the left, I just think about, you call us names, but you are such a supply of comic relief here for us.
Comic relief, yes, but that image of the nude protest rally,
you're done.
Not here. Hey, Sharon, we got to go to a break, and we do have a great show lined up for our viewers and our listeners. And you are watching and listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Sharon Engel and yours truly, Rick Trader. I love to say this. Today's show, like all our shows, is being brought to you by the First Amendment, protected by the Second. Think about it. They go hand in hand. We got some great guests. Don't go away. On the other side, we'll tell you who they are and what we're going to be talking about.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America, and get this. Did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host today is Sharon Engel. And for rebroadcast, please check out our website, ccrshow.com. That's ccrshow.com. There you can find our TV show, our radio show, a lot of great conservative information, a lot of great conservative writing and thinking and articles. And Sharon, we've got 3 great guests joining us today.
Yes, we do. Our first guest is Patrice Lee Onwuka, and she's a senior policy analyst at Independent Women's Forum. She has worked in the advocacy and communications fields for more than a decade, and prior to joining IWF, she served as national spokeswoman and communications director at Generation Opportunity and worked at the Philanthropy Roundtable and the Fund for American Studies in policy and media roles. She's also held consulting roles as a speechwriter for the United Nations spokesman and manager for a student travel program to South Africa. We've asked her to come on and talk about an article she wrote. Here's how Jussie Smolette earned a slap on the wrist for his anti-Trump hoax. Slap on the wrist. That's about right. 16 charges, and they've all pretty much been swept under the carpet.
Never mind.
Move along.
Nothing to see here. Move on.
Our next guest is a friend of ours, Robert Knight, who is a Washington Times contributor. His experience includes editor and writer at the Los Angeles Times, regular weekly columnist for Washington Times, townhall.com, and onenewsnow.com. Robert was a media fellow at the Hoover Institute, and he held senior positions with the Heritage Foundation, Family Research Council, Concerned Women for America, Media Research Center, and his latest book is A Strong Constitution, What Would America Look Like If We Followed the Law? And we've asked him to talk about an article he wrote, How Democrats Tried to Make Elections Obsolete. I think this is going to be a good lesson in the Constitution when we have an expert like Robert Knight on.
Yeah, and you know, as Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. I want to revise that, and I say it all the time. We are no more than one election away from losing our freedoms. And it's rather scary what the people on the left want to do to our electoral process, to put themselves in power forever and ever.
And we just got through talking about what the left looks like. They're a bunch of crazies.
Not pretty.
Our final guest today is retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who is a decorated combat veteran and author of 5 books and has his Ph.D. Colonel Macgregor was commissioned into the U.S. Army after 1 year at Virginia Military Institute and 4 years at West Point. He served as director of Joint Operations Center during the Kosovo Air Campaign in 1999, and he is widely recognized as an expert on organizational design and grand strategy. He is going to be talking to us about national security, the crisis of the medical emergency, as well as national security crisis on the border because of these migrant caravans. I'm very concerned about this because, of course, the left is fighting like crazy to get President Trump to pull back from declaring the border an emergency situation. But I think that Colonel Macgregor may be able to clear this up for us
I
today.
think so, too. In doing show prep for this guest, he sent us out some talking points and notes and articles. And again, I say all the time that I learn so much from our guests. I'm their student, they're my teacher. The CBP anticipates 1 million illegals will be apprehended at our border this year in 2019. And we'll be talking about that. And tell me this is not a crisis at our border. That's incredible. That is incredible.
Well,
1 million apprehensions at our borders. And it's all perpetuated by the Democrats, the liberals, the left. They're trying to destroy our country. What they're really trying to do is they're trying to get control of this country. And in doing so, they're out to destroy it. They are really out to destroy it. And they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn. All they want is their power back, and they want to keep it forever and ever. to make this look like Cuba or Venezuela.
Well, it's exactly what Saul Alinsky's rules are, is, whatever it takes. The end justifies the means. So whatever it takes to get to where you want to go, just do that. You talked about those talking points, and it's just amazing to me that we don't talk anything about HIV anymore. And yet, that's one of the talking points here. In 2009, the CDC ruled HIV would no longer be designated as an infectious disease. What?
And
what?
And just go by the date, 2009. 2009 was the date. Excuse me, who was the president at that time? Okay, who was in charge of the House of Representatives? Who was in charge of the Senate? Who was in the White House? HIV is not an infectious disease?
I thought it was deadly. I mean, we've at least given people the hope of a longer life, but
I got an idea, Sharon. If it's not an infectious disease, let's expose everybody on the left to it. All right? It's not infectious. Let's expose everybody on the left to it.
Well, and this article also says that after 10 years of not testing, they aren't even testing people for it anymore. It's epidemic in some places in Africa. I just, and we could have those folks coming across our southern border, because when you come illegally, there is no way that you are going to be tested or examined. When our forefathers, when my ancestors came to Castle Garden is where they came in, because it was before Ellis Island. But when they came in, they had to go through a very strict health screening. Mm-hmm. They weren't allowed to come in if they were sick.
Well, Sharon, a lot of people have let their guard down as far as HIV and AIDS goes. They look at people like Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson announced in 1991 that he had HIV. And because of drugs, because of treatments, he's been able to ward off full-blown AIDS. So a lot of people think, well, it's not a big problem anymore. It's not a big deal anymore. But what happens with diseases, for instance, with pests? I used to be in the exterminating business, and I'll just use this as an example. You have to rotate your pesticides, because if you, as an exterminator, you have to rotate your pesticides, because what happens is the insects will build up an immunity towards that pesticide, and therefore that particular pesticide will no longer work on like roaches. Okay? Well, the diseases are the same thing. Okay, they'll build up resistances to certain medications. So just because now people are lulled into this false sense of security that, well, we can now treat HIV, we can stop full-blown AIDS. What will happen, I do believe, is that diseases, those viruses, will go through a transformation. Well, they will come back with a vengeance. Hey, Sharon, we got to go to a break and get our first guest on. And you are listening and watching the Conservative Commandos radio show. She's Sharon Engel. I'm Rick Trader. Easy to tell the difference, isn't it? And we're coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network. By the way, we both have our clothes on. We're going to keep them on here. We're not protesters in London. And we're coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network. On the other side, we're going to have one of our friends from the Independent Women's Forum join us, Patrice Onwuka, and she's going to be talking about here's how Jussie Smolette earned a slap on the wrist for his anti-Trump hoax. Don't go away. Avoid disappointment and future regret. We will be right back.
AM/FM 24/7 Roku channel broadcasts all of our shows on demand. To ensure reliability, we store and stream our content on the same servers as Netflix and Amazon. Our Roku channel is free to use, and anyone owning one of the more than 10 million Roku devices can watch our channel at no cost whatsoever. If you have a television show or are thinking about producing a show, you can be a part of AM/FM 24/7's Roku channel. Watch our great shows on your Roku device. It's free and more reliable than cable TV. Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to BuyYourTimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. BuyYourTimeshare.com. That's BuyYourTimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
And welcome back. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host today is Sharon Engel. And for rebroadcast of our shows, please check out our website, CCRShow.com. That's CCRShow.com. You'll be able to find our TV show there, our radio show there, and a lot of great articles and information. And Sharon, we have our first guest with us, and I'll make that introduction. Patrice Onwuka is Senior Policy Analyst at the Independent Women's Forum. Onwuka worked in the advocacy and communication fields for more than a decade, and prior to joining the Independent Women's Forum, she served as a national spokeswoman and communications director at Generation Opportunity. That's the first time I met Patrice. And she's also held consulting roles as a speechwriter for a United Nations spokesman and a manager for a student travel program to South Africa, someplace I'd like to visit sometime. But Patrice, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thank you so much, Rick and Sharon.
Well, it's great to have you with us. Great to see you again. It's great to see you down at CPAC.
That's right.
We've asked you to join us today to discuss an article that you wrote. Here's how Jussie Smolette earned a slap on the wrist for his anti-Trump hoax. And you're right in your article. All 16 charges against actor Jussie Smolette were suddenly dropped by the state's attorney. Smolette had been charged by the Chicago Police Department with filing a false police report and for staging an alleged racial and homophobic attacks against himself, claiming to make America great again supporters perpetrated. Patrice, we've heard a lot about this. One question that I have about this is, since this guy staged this attack, making it look like a hate crime, should he have been charged with a hate crime?
Well, I mean, that may be true. That may be an interesting charge. I mean, if you consider that, I think for that to work, you would have to consider Trump supporters or Make America Great supporters a protected class. Mm-hmm. I think they should be protected at this point, considering all of the vitriol that happens against Trump supporters. But, you know, he is a national embarrassment, and he's an embarrassment to the Black community. But it's the very same Black community that's kind of hiding him out, particularly our good friends at the Rainbow Push Coalition. Reverend Jussie Jackson, I put Reverend in quotation marks, but the Black community is covering for him. They've circled the wagons around him, and it does a disservice to our police and really to the true victims of racial and homophobic attacks.
Patrice, in your article, you outline what his community service was. Can you tell our audience?
Oh, it was a slap on the wrist. He served for, I think, 8 hours one day, or 10 hours one day and 8 hours the next at the Rainbow Push Coalition. This is the grassroots advocacy group of Reverend Jussie Jackson. What Jussie Smolette did was, you know, a basic glorified intern work. He stuffed envelopes for fundraising purposes. No doubt those letters said, "Hey, guess who's stuffing this? Celebrity Jussie Smolette. We need more money." He gave them some guidance on how to sell more merchandise at their bookstore. He gave them some critiques of their television program. Apparently they have one every week, and how to make it better. And apparently that qualifies as serving the community, so much so that the tens of thousands of dollars, probably millions of dollars spent in a manhunt to track down his alleged perpetrators, that I guess that covers over all the time and money spent there. He also did have to, he agreed to fork over the $10,000 bond that he spent to keep him out of jail as well.
Well, this $10,000 bond, this is crazy, because if the state's attorney dropped all charges, but then says, oh, by the way, he's forfeiting his $10,000 bond. Patrice, I know you're not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. Sharon's not a lawyer. But I would think that it would be highly unlikely for any other suspect for any other crimes, number one, to have their charges thrown out, since this indictment came down from a grand jury, countless hours of police investigation, the chief of police saying that this guy is guilty. We put a lot of work here. But what gets me is the forfeiture of the $10,000 bond. If he did nothing wrong,
why forfeit?
Why forfeit? Why forfeit? So I find that all suspicious. And also the community service, as you described it, to me sounds like fun.
It is.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I volunteered for different things, to stuff envelopes, to make phone calls.
Exactly.
Plus, you get to meet the public in their bookstore, and you get to watch TV.
That's right.
Sounds like a really cool day to me.
It is. And he did it again the next day. Also, I think they're counting some time he spent where he was organizing a choir for, I think it was the Kennedy Center, some sort of performance. Oh, that's real hard work. I mean, when you think about community service as a penance for, you know, a crime, you think of an orange jumpsuit along the highway, picking up trash, maybe wiping graffiti, scrubbing graffiti off of walls. Something that demonstrates that you actually are sorry for what you did, and provide some restitution to the victims who've been harmed. There is no restitution to victims harmed. There is no penance on his part. There's no even show that he really is sorry for what he did. And he continues to maintain that he's been truthful. Whatever truth that is the question.
Yeah. Patrice, I got to go to a very dangerous area with you now. Okay. We've heard the term white privilege over and over and over again for the past 30, 40 years. But is there something now called black privilege? I mean, black privilege in as much as, Jussie Smolette, he had his charges dropped by a black state's attorney. There seems to be some sort of, I'll call it, interference by supporters of Hillary Clinton. And so I wonder if this isn't a backlash. Now we have something called black privilege.
Rick, I think this is more celebrity privilege than it is black privilege. I mean, the average black man in Chicago, somehow I don't think he would have his charges dropped against him, or that he would be so willing to fork over $10,000, as a donation to the city. So I think it's more about his celebrity status instead, where celebrities, they get away with murder, literally. And this is not this idea of celebrity privilege extends to the situation, the scandal involving admissions to colleges, where we see celebrities paying hefty bribes to get their kids into schools that they couldn't ordinarily get into on merit alone. So it's this idea that I'm special. I'm on television. I have all the friends. I have the Obama White House officials calling.
I meant Obama, not Hillary Clinton. I meant Obama. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think they're all kind of work together. But you have these high-level officials calling to the city, the state's attorney's office, pleading on behalf of Jussie that this was not so bad, this was not a big deal, let's just let him off the hook with kind of time served. It stinks because the average person and the average black person does not get this kind of accommodation.
Well, let me turn the tables. I use the word black privilege. You rightly called it celebrity privilege. We've heard again for years and decades how if you're rich, if you're famous, as you say, you can literally get away with murder. But if you're poor, if you're just an average person in Chicago trying to make a way of it, you're not going to get those privileges that Jussie Smolette got. So do you see this probably creating a greater divide from we, the unwashed, and the elites?
I wish it did. It does. Certainly people recognize it. But the challenge here is that this case has taken a really interesting turn where I don't know if you saw the protest that broke out yesterday, where you had the police protesting the state's attorney dropping the charges, and then you had, guess who? The Rainbow Push Coalition marching out. Wow, where have we
heard that before?
Where did we hear that before? Jesse Jackson and his followers counter-protesting on behalf of Jussie Smollett. So, the very same people who would never get the same accommodation that Jussie Smollett got are protesting on his behalf and protesting police who are actually there to help serve and protect this community. And so that's why this is all becoming a muddled political mess.
Hey, Patrice, we have to take a short break. Could you hold on just for a few moments for us, please?
Yes,
I'm sure Sharon wants to get into this conversation. And you are listening and watching the Conservative Commandos radio show with Sharon Engel and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. Our guest this segment is Patrice Onwuka. She's a senior policy analyst at our friends at the Independent Women's Forum. And we're talking about here's how Jussie earned a slap on the wrist for his anti-Trump hoax. Don't go away. We will be right back.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes. Now, people say, why didn't you report it to the authorities? Well, they were the ones doing it.
The integrity of one man, one vote doesn't apply at the Texas state legislature. There is no way to know if your representatives are voting for themselves.
Department, a Republican, reaches back to vote for Democrat Oliveira. Democrat Matt Reynolds votes for Republican England.
2 out of 3 voters nationwide believe that voter fraud is a serious problem in the U.S. today.
The process is rigged.
Both sides of the aisle are guilty.
Florida now has to tell the Department of Justice whether the state will comply with DOJ's demand to stop purging thousands of people from its voter rolls.
We have the sloppiest election system of any industrialized democracy.
Philadelphia flagged 50,000 duplicate registrations, so just think how many more slipped through.
It's almost impossible to detect. How do you get caught? You only get caught if you confess.
Election corruption is deeply embedded in America. Quote, election fraud is a crime that usually pays, unquote, writes Tracy Campbell in his book, The Deliver the Vote, A History of Election Fraud, an American political tradition from 1742 to 2004. In 1742, the first Prime Minister of Britain in the American colonies, Robert Walpole, was forced to resign.
We have a right not to have our vote canceled out by someone who shouldn't be voting, someone who's an illegal alien, someone who's a felon not eligible to vote, someone who doesn't exist. If they vote, they cancel your vote out as much as if you're prevented from voting.
If this is going to be fixed, it's going to have to be a citizen effort. It comes down to, it's the same old question, if not now, when? If not us, then who?
This is huge. This is about the democracy and the principles of the United States of America. People say, but why you? Why you? Why? Well, why not? And if it starts with a fireman, if it starts with a sanitation worker, if it starts with a teacher or a nurse or a caretaker of the elderly, then so be it. It's got to start somewhere. But it's time we come together and fix this problem once and for all.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
Serious allegations of voter fraud, the claims raising questions about the
Commerce Secretary Ron Brown and 32 others were on a military plane that crashed today in a violent storm. There are no known survivors at this time.
The U.S. Army was funded by the evil entity.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
The process is rigged.
People die and fall for the right to vote. It's too brutal.
So it's incredibly important now that we draw a line and say, not on our watch.
And thank you for staying with us. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host today is Sharon Angle. Yes, that's Sharon Angle. And want to give a shout out to the folks who listen to us on radio stations in Jacksonville, Tampa, and the Villages, Florida, Las Vegas and Reno, Macon, Georgia, Lancaster and Pittsburgh, Boulder and Colorado Springs, Milwaukee, Long Beach, California, and seen on the AUN television network. Sharon Angle, our guest, is still with us. Please reintroduce her and pick up the conversation.
Well, thanks, Rick. We are talking with Patrice Onwuka, who is the Senior Policy Analyst at Independent Women's Forum, and she's been talking to us about an article that she wrote. Here's how Jussie Smolette earned a slap on the wrist for his anti-Trump hoax. In the previous segment, you mentioned that Trump supporters might be a protected class, and you know, it's not so far from the truth. We've been reporting on lives that have been absolutely ruined because of their association with President Trump, not because of any guilt, but just because they happened to be there at the time that someone thought, well, if we investigate them, maybe we can push them into ratting out the president or some dumb thing like that. I also know that here in Nevada, we can't go to California with bumper stickers on our bumpers for Trump, because we'll get keyed, we'll get smashed windows, slashed tires, things like that. We also are very careful about wearing our MAGA hats. Remember what happens when you wear a red MAGA hat at the Capitol. So I'm wondering, really, is there cause for us to say, yeah, we need some protection here, because we don't have our First Amendment rights to just have an opinion anymore?
Well, you know, I mean, while we joke about making MAGA supporters protected classes, I mean, it's a joke, but the idea is that we should have freedom of thought in this country, and you should not have paint thrown on you or a drink thrown at you or be assaulted, as we've seen. Just think about the Covington High School students who were in Washington, D.C. for the March for Life. They support pro-life causes and they support the president, and they were vilified by the media until it turned out that they were the ones who were the actual victims of people who, of an older gentleman and others who should have known much better than to accost them. You know, and the media is complicit in all of this because they perpetrate this narrative that Trump supporters are racist, xenophobic, you know, that whole basket of deplorables that Hillary Clinton talked about in 2016 when she lost, you know, and it's not right. I wish we had someone to protect people who support the president. That should be law enforcement. Frankly, that should be the media. And saying, hey, what's wrong is wrong, and calling it out. But again, they are so much on this anti-Trump crusade that they are willing to support anybody in anything that takes down those who support the president. And it's disgusting.
Well, at CPAC, we did interview some celebrities, and they get some of this pushback as well if they're a conservative celebrity. So the celebrity privilege really only applies on the left, doesn't it?
Progressive celebrity privilege, that's right.
So we have to make a fine line of distinction here when we're talking about Jussie Smolette. He's a privileged progressive celebrity.
That's right.
And I thought it was interesting. There's one line here in your article. It says, it's a shame. The outrage from Mayor Rahm Emanuel, the Chicago Police Department, the right and the left is all well warranted. So some of those I didn't expect. I didn't expect outrage from Rahm Emanuel. Did you?
I didn't. And interestingly, apparently there is there's a race today, a mayoral race. So he's on his way out. Maybe that's why he feels like he can speak openly about this issue and honestly about this issue. Whereas if he was running, he might be a little bit more closed-lipped. But you know, there were some people on the left who were actually saying, you know, this is ridiculous. This does a disservice to true victims in the future. Unfortunately, those voices have slowly disappeared, and they've just been replaced by those on the right and the police. Not surprisingly, the right is standing with law enforcement here.
Sharon, if I could jump in for a minute. A couple of days ago, I saw Rahm Emanuel on television talking about this incident, the Jussie Smolette incident. But then he went into a tirade about the cause of these things happening. You know who he blamed? He blamed Donald Trump. He blamed Donald Trump. And he talked about how because of Trump, there's so much hate and division in the country. But I would challenge one of you ladies to give me one instance where conservatives attacked liberals. We've had a lot of stories in the news about conservatives who've been attacked by liberals. In fact, the other day there was an 85-year-old man who was kicked and punched in front of a Planned Parenthood office. We saw the Covington High School students attacked. We see Antifa marching through the streets whenever there's a conservative rally. But I haven't seen instances where liberals were attacked by conservatives, but we've seen a lot of just the opposite. Conservatives and conservative groups and people with Make America Great Again hats being attacked by liberals. Ladies, help me out here. Give me an instance, one instant, because I have a list right here of 538 different attacks perpetrated on conservatives by liberals. Ladies, help me. Give me an instant. What instant? One.
Do you have one, Sharon?
No, I don't. Only Jussie Smolette. Really, only Jussie Smolette. He was trying to make a case that liberals do get attacked by conservatives, and dang, it just didn't work out so well for him. As you said, Patrice, he seems to be the real race baiter. He's the one that's even perpetuating this, so that those of us who are victims of real crime, now we are suspect of staging that crime ourselves, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's exactly right. Now, it's interesting. A few weeks back, I tweeted a list of examples where blacks and people of color had some discrimination against them. Maybe they were assaulted or things spray painted. Turned out to be a list of hoaxes where the so-called victims, or they would spray paint Trump or MAGA on their property or something, or try to set fire to a church. In that case, it was one of the church parishioners who was a black man who did it. So very often, you're absolutely right. Very often it is the other way around. And you know what's sad? Jussie Smolette in race baiting is almost, I won't say the same, but almost as bad as Dylan Roof, I believe it was, in South Carolina, who tried to stoke a race war by attacking a South Carolina black church. And that was dangerous and caused the loss of life. You know, we've got to get to a point now where we move beyond this anti-Trump rhetoric that's really baseless, and figure out what can we do to actually help our communities move forward. And you know, his actions, irresponsible. They do nothing to help. They only make things worse. And I think that was his intention.
You know, I know where we can start. Treat everyone else how you want to be treated.
The golden rule. The
golden rule. That's where I think we can start. Sharon, I know this is your segment. I just wanted to jump
okay.
in
I only had one last question, and that is this Rainbow Push group. I know that Jesse Jackson, like you said, he sends out fundraising letters so that he can pay for some of the services that he feels like his group needs. Is one of those services these paid protesters? Because you said the police came out and they were protesting, and now we've got push people protesting. Were they paid to do that? I get this feeling around the country whenever I see a protest from the left that those guys have a paycheck coming in from that. It's not a real ideological this is how I feel about these issues.
Well, let's look at the evidence. This was during the daytime. Most people have jobs during the daytime, and unless they're really, really dedicated to an issue, they're probably not going to take the day off. So I'm not going to speculate, but I'm just going to put some of the evidence across the table and say, it looks very suspect that all these folks suddenly are very supportive and are willing to take the day off from work to go and do this. Now, I went to a support Kavanaugh rally back in October. When his nomination was being contested with false allegations, or what seemed to be false allegations, and there were paid protesters there. You know how I know? Because vans of pizza boxes showed up to only give out pizza slices to the people who had T-shirts and were there. I didn't get a pizza slice because my shirt didn't have an expletive and Kavanaugh. Mine said support Kavanaugh. So
well, you know what, Patrice, the next time I see you, I'll treat you to a slice of pizza. How's that?
Thank you, Rick.
Hey, Patrice, we have to run, but before we do, please tell our audience how they could follow your work, read your articles, and also find out what's going on with the Independent Women's Forum.
Okay, folks, go to iwf.org. Very simple, iwf.org. We have tons of daily blogs every day on these issues and commentary, videos from our hits on Fox and radio programs like Conservative Commandos here. So tons of information there. I would entreat everybody to be frequent guests because we've always got something fresh, refreshing, and interesting take on the news of the day.
Indeed, indeed. In fact, I get the blogs and newsletters from the Independent Women's Forum every week. Always great and interesting articles.
Thank you.
Patrice Onwuka, thank you so much for joining us. Take care and God bless.
Thank you too, Rick. Thank you, Sharon. Pleasure to be on with you guys today.
And you are listening and watching the Conservative Commandos Radio show. Angle and yours truly, Rick Trader. On the other side, we're going to be talking about how Democrats are trying to make elections obsolete. Our guest is going to be Robert Knight from the Washington Times. Don't go away. We will be right back.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America, and get this. Did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
And we want to thank you for staying with us. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with Sharon Engel and yours truly, Rick Trader. Want to give a shout out to the folks who listen to us on radio stations in Florida, in Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Wisconsin, and California, and also watch us on the AUN television network in places like San Francisco and San Jose. And with that, Sharon, our next guest is with us. Please make him feel welcome.
Well, it's a privilege and an honor to introduce Robert Knight, who is a Washington Times contributor. His experience includes editor and writer at the Los Angeles Times, a regular weekly columnist for the Washington Times, townhall.com, and onenewsnow.com. Robert was a media fellow at the Hoover Institute. He held senior positions with the Heritage Foundation, Family Research Council, Concerned Women for America, Media Research Center, and his latest book is A Strong Constitution: What Would America Look Like If We Followed the Law? Robert, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rick and Sharon.
Well, it's our pleasure, always. Robert, we want to talk to you about your article, How Democrats Try to Make Elections Obsolete. First off, though, I want you to go into the Constitution a bit with us and talk about the Electoral College, its purpose, why it's there. Because I think Americans are getting confused over this whole issue of the Electoral College, and they're kind of floating more and more to a majority rule situation rather than the democratic republic that we have.
Well, yeah, they want to go for abolishing the Electoral College because it divides power around the country, and they dominate both coasts right now. So they'd be very happy to have a national popular vote. After Hillary beat Trump in California by about 4 million votes, and her overall margin was 2,800,000 some. So all she needed to do is win California, and then she beat Trump in New York by 1.7 million. So they want a situation where they can just depend on the big cities on both coasts, and then they don't really have to worry about the rest of the country. The founders understood that urban areas could dominate, so that's why they broke it up into the Electoral College, to force people to take into account the entire country. But here's the scary part. They have the Interstate Electoral Compact, where states are agreeing to send all their electoral votes to whoever wins the popular vote. If enough states get together and do that, adding up to 270 votes, that is a de facto abolishment of the Electoral College. And right now they're up to 180. Delaware is about to do it. Colorado just signed aboard. This is very bad. We do have a republic, not a direct democracy. Direct democracies don't last. Republics do better. In fact, ours is the longest living republic, and we need to keep it.
So if I'm understanding correctly, they can get around the Electoral College. Talk to me about that one more time. I'm not sure that I get what they're doing, because I thought it was the Electoral College was apportioned according to your representatives in Congress, and that those vote. I understand that not every state does all winner take all, but how does this work?
Yeah, a couple states like Maine, for instance, apportion it according to the congressional district. In fact, Trump got an electoral vote in Maine, and so did Hillary. For the other, they have 2 congressional districts in Maine. But the way the Interstate Compact works is, say you're in the state of Mississippi, and say the popular vote is won by Hillary Clinton, and even though Donald Trump wins the popular vote in Mississippi, all of Mississippi's electoral votes would go to Hillary if Mississippi signed aboard the Interstate Compact. So it really just it eliminates the idea of the states and the idea of a republic with divided powers. It makes it all one big glob. And that's not what the founders intended. They saw great danger in this. And, of course, in the big cities, it's easier to commit vote fraud. Just think of Chicago, where the dead are, vote early and often.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the Democrats are driving toward this because, frankly, they're so radical now, regular American voters are turning against them. So they're trying to flood the country with illegal immigrants, hoping to turn them into voters, legal or not. And at the same time, they're trying to dismantle electoral safeguards like voter ID laws. They voted on a party line vote for H.R. 1, the For the People Act. Isn't that communist sounding? For the people, yeah. Yeah, right, like the People's Republic of China. This thing just would leave the country wide open to vote fraud. It would nationalize elections. It would take the states out of the equation. It also would expose conservative donors to harassment, because it would kind of undo the Citizens United decision, whereby people can band together and buy political ads, such as the National Rifle Association or the UAW, for that matter, unions. This would subject every political advertisement or speech to scrutiny as to whether it's violating campaign finance laws, and if it's determined that it is a campaign expenditure, they would reveal the donors to whoever's taking out the ads. So you know what happened with Prop 8 in California in 2008? The left punished all the people who donated to the Prop 8 campaign protecting marriage as the union of one man and one woman. They came after Mozilla Firefox chairman Brendan Ike years later. He'd given $1,000 for Prop 8 in 2008. They came after him, I think, in 2014 and pushed him out of his job. So this is what the Democrats want to do. They want to destroy electoral safeguards, bring in millions of people and replace the electorate, and turn us into a one-party system like has shaped up in California.
Well, you're exactly right about California, and I can't think that I would like to, in my state of Nevada, being so close, give our 6 electoral votes over to whatever California decided. They decide that he wins, and New York City says this candidate wins, and by golly, the rest of us just go along with it. That just seems outrageous. Outrageous.
Yeah, it is.
And I guess you know, the other outrageous thing. I was one of those that voted that 18-year-olds should get the vote. When during the Vietnam War, we said, you know, this is something that needs to happen. If you're old enough to go to war, you're old enough to vote. And yet now they have this other thing going, allowing 16-year-olds to vote. And I want you to get into that with Rick. I know he wants to talk about that a lot, but we need to get on to a break here. We're coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and AM/FM 24/7, and now you can watch our TV show on the AUN TV network in Northern California. We'll be right back, Rick and I, with our guest, Robert Knight, who's talking about the Democrats trying to make elections obsolete. And we've been discussing how they will go around our Constitution to do that. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
AM/FM 24/7 Roku channel broadcasts all of our shows on demand. To ensure reliability, we store and stream our content on the same servers as Netflix and Amazon. Our Roku channel is free to use, and anyone owning one of the more than 10 million Roku devices can watch our channel at no cost whatsoever. If you have a television show or are thinking about producing a show, you can be a part of AM/FM 24/7's Roku channel. Watch our great shows on your Roku device. It's free and more reliable than cable TV. Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is, there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to BuyYourTimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. BuyYourTimeshare.com. That's BuyYourTimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host today is Sharon Angle. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of our shows, please check out our website, ccrshow.com. That's ccrshow.com. Also, please like us, friend us, and follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Our guest this segment is Robert Knight. He's a Washington Times contributor, and we're discussing an article he wrote, How Democrats Are Trying to Make Elections Obsolete. Robert Knight, thank you for holding through that break. We really do appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Rick and Sharon.
Robert, this whole idea of bypassing the Electoral College by these states throwing their votes towards the person who gets the majority of the popular vote, is that constitutional?
That's a very good question, because it de facto violates the Constitution, obviously, but I could see left-wing attorneys saying, well, no, the Constitution doesn't prohibit states from deciding what to do with their own electoral votes. After all, some of them split them as it is. But I think a constitutional attorney could make the case that this does violate the Constitution, because it has the opposite effect from what the founders put in place. So if they get that far, if they get up to 270 electoral votes, I would hope some conservative constitutional attorneys would be out there suing and stopping this thing. They can't overturn it by a constitutional amendment. Not enough states would sign on to that. So that's why they're doing this go-around.
Well, Robert, please help educate me. You're the author of a book, A Strong Constitution. What would America look like if we followed the law? I'm asking this question. I really want to know. When we vote for a president now, am I wrong in thinking we're not actually voting for a president, but we're voting for the delegates who are representing this president or this individual?
Well, technically, yes, but the presidential candidate's name is on the ballot along with the elector. So, for all intents and purposes, you're voting for the presidential candidate of your choice. But you should be well aware that you're voting for people who will uphold your vote by going ahead and voting for the candidate you chose. If they get elected to the Electoral College, in very rare cases do they betray the voters and vote for somebody else. In fact, I think you'd have to look it up, and I don't know that it's happened in modern times.
Robert, this bill, H.R. 1, For the People Act, and these people on the left are real wordsmiths, all right? Well, there's some other, what I feel are very, you and Sharon talked about a few of the items in this bill, but it'll force taxpayers to subsidize political campaigns and regulates free speech. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, they're really upending current law with this. They are doing it several ways. They are expanding the Federal Election Commission to politicize it. Right now, it's nonpartisan, and they're trying to increase the number of it. And by the way, they're also in a separate campaign. They're talking about packing the Supreme Court, adding justices to overturn the conservative majority now. But they also have, as I said earlier in another segment, they provided for going after people who contribute in a larger pool to campaign contributions, and then exposing the donors. And of course, this would the left doesn't have anything to fear, because they're the ones doing the exposing and harassing. So, but they want to out conservative donors and punish them. So it opens them up to mob harassment, basically.
Robert, you also write in here, it also mandates including non-citizens here in the United States, legally and illegally, in counts for redistricting, which determines congressional districts and federal funding. How would talk about that?
Yeah, there was a Supreme Court case last year brought out of Texas where taxpayers said, if you apportion districting counting illegal aliens or non-citizens, they can be here illegally, but if you count non-citizens who can't vote in the totals that determine congressional districts and federal funding, what you're doing is dilating the vote of American citizens. Think of it this way. Say one Texas county has 10,000 more illegal aliens than another adjoining county, and they apportion the congressional districts. They give that district more weight in determining a congressional district than the other one. Then you've just diluted the vote of the taxpayer, the American citizen. I didn't explain it very well, but that's how it works. Look, states that have tons of illegal aliens would have more congressional districts than states that don't have that problem.
Well, I think you're seeing that in California already, actually. Robert, we only have a couple of minutes. This is a great article. People really need to read your article to find out what this HR 1 is all about. But in here, you tell a very interesting story. I, for ad nauseum, have talked about actually raising the voter age, not lowering it. People like Nancy Pelosi want to lower it to 16. You tell a great story. Actually, it was a story that Beto O'Rourke told at one time. Could you tell our audience about this story Beto O'Rourke wrote?
Yeah, it was something he posted back when he was under the handle of Psychedelic Warlord when he was a teenager. And he talks about driving along and running down two small children. And he says, I heard the crashing of the two children in the hood and then the sharp cry of pain from one of the two. I was so fascinated for a moment that when I had stopped my vehicle, I just sat in a daze, sweet visions filling my head. Well, he did this when he was 16 years old. Now you can say, okay, Beto O'Rourke really regrets that now, and his age brings wisdom. But why would we give 16-year-olds the vote when they're so unformed at that point? They can't own property. They don't pay taxes. They really don't know anything at that point. They can't buy
they
firearms,
think they do.
They can't get married. Yeah, they think they know everything.
Hey, Robert, when I was
want to give them the vote.
Robert, when I was 19, I can remember a specific instance walking out of my insurance agent's office thinking, oh my God, here I am. I'm 19. I know everything there is to know. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? What could I learn the rest of my life? And now, your story. Robert Knight, Washington Times contributor, we want to thank you so much for joining us here on Conservative Commandos. Please tell our audience how they could follow your work and read your articles.
Okay, well, they can read them at WashingtonTimes.com, and my column comes out every Sunday night, and then it comes out in the print edition of the Washington Times on Monday mornings. And later in the week, it comes out in townhall.com, onenewsnow.com, barbwire.com, a couple other places.
Love having you on. Robert, thank you so much for joining us. Take care, and God bless.
Same to you guys.
And you are listening and watching the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host today is Sharon Angle. And on the other side of this break, we're going to have Colonel Douglas Macgregor joining us. And we're going to be talking about not the national security crisis and medical emergency crisis for the migrant caravans at the southern border. Don't go away. We'll be right back with our next guest.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes. Now, people say, why didn't you report it to the authorities? Well, they were the ones doing it.
The integrity of one man, one vote doesn't apply at the Texas state legislature. There is no way to know if your representatives are voting for themselves.
Hartman, a Republican, reaches back to vote for Democrat Oliveira.
Democrat Matt Reynolds votes for Republican England.
2 out of 3 voters nationwide believe that voter fraud is a serious problem in the U.S. today.
The process is rigged.
Both sides of the aisle are guilty.
Florida now has to tell the Department of Justice whether the state will comply with DOJ's demand to stop purging thousands of people from its voter rolls.
We have the sloppiest election system of any industrialized democracy.
Philadelphia flagged 50,000 duplicate registrations, so just think how many more slipped through.
It's almost impossible to detect.
How do you get caught? You only get caught if you confess.
Election corruption is deeply embedded in America. Quote, election fraud is a crime that usually pays, unquote, writes Tracy Campbell in his book, Deliver the Vote, A History of Election Fraud, an American political tradition from 1742 to 2004. In 1742, the first Prime Minister of Britain in the American colonies, Robert Walpole, was forced to resign.
We have a right not to have our vote canceled out by someone who shouldn't be voting, someone who's an illegal alien, someone who's a felon not eligible to vote, someone who doesn't exist. If they vote, they cancel your vote out as much as if you're prevented from voting.
If this is going to be fixed, it's going to have to be a citizen effort. It comes down to, it's the same old question, if not now, when? If not us, then who?
This is huge. This is about the democracy and the principles of the United States of America. People say, but why you? Why you? Why? Well, why not? And if it starts with a fireman, if it starts with a sanitation worker, if it starts with a teacher or a nurse or a caretaker of the elderly, then so be it. It's got to start somewhere. But it's time we come together and fix this problem once and for all.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
Serious allegations of voter fraud, the claims raising questions about the
Commerce Secretary Ron Brown and 32 others were on a military plane that crashed today in a violent storm. There are no known survivors at this time.
The U.S. Army was funded by the evil entity.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
The process is rigged.
People die and they fall for the right it's too brutal.
So it's incredibly important now that we draw a line and say, not on our watch.
This is the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host is Sharon Angle. And for rebroadcast, please check out our website, ccrshow.com. That's ccrshow.com. You can get replays of our radio show or TV show, read a lot of great articles, pick up a lot of terrific information. Sharon, our next guest is with us. The honor of the introduction is yours.
It is an honor to introduce Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who is a decorated combat veteran and author of 5 books and a Ph.D. Macgregor was commissioned in the U.S. Army after 1 year at the Virginia Military Institute and 4 years at West Point. Colonel Macgregor served as the director of Joint Operations Center during the Kosovo Air Campaign in 1999. He is widely recognized as an expert on organizational design and grand strategy, and he's also a frequent radio and television commentator on national security affairs. Colonel Macgregor, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're excited about this topic, actually. We want to talk to you about the national security crisis and medical emergency from the migrant caravans on our southern borders. And I guess probably the most interesting piece is that so many people make the erroneous assumption that all of these migrants are coming from Mexico or Central America, but that's not true, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, in addition to the tens of thousands that are being mobilized, prepared, and then sent north in caravans by people on the ground in El Salvador and Nicaragua and other parts of Central America, as well as in Mexico, we also have operating in Mexico, literally just across the border from the United States, Hezbollah. And Hezbollah, which is the Iranian-backed terrorist organization in Lebanon, does a land office business in Central America. They're trading in drugs, involved in human trafficking, and they move people who are ultimately agents for their organization into the United States all the time. And to these, you have to add unknown but large numbers of Chinese illegals who come in on a routine basis. In fact, some 300 were discovered in a barn recently in Texas. So the bottom line is this is about more than just tens of thousands of poor, unskilled people coming to the United States and leaving their home countries at the behest, by the way, of their governments. It's also about all sorts of unsavory characters and people who are, frankly, interested in doing us harm, pouring into the United States.
So when the president says that this open border is a security problem and is an emergency security problem, he's not far off the mark, is he?
Oh, not at all. In fact, one of the things that's so frustrating is that people act in Washington right now as though there are hundreds of thousands of Russian troops massing on the borders with Poland or Ukraine or somewhere else preparing to attack the West. That's untrue. There are no such armies. There are no Chinese armies massing on the borders with Vietnam prepared to strike into Southeast Asia. There are none in Manchuria prepared to intervene in North Korea. In fact, there is no threat from North Korea at all anymore. And so if you look at these, we've got tens of thousands of troops sitting around in Europe and in Northeast Asia with, frankly, nothing useful to do. To these must be added another 10,000, 15,000 operating in the Middle East, another 10,000 or so in Africa. All of these troops are badly needed on our border. They could put a stop to this very quickly. The president is the commander-in-chief. We've been on the border before. The Army was there for almost 100 years, from 1846 to 1948. All he has to do as the commander-in-chief is order the Army to the border and to take control of it and to secure it, which means stopping anyone trying to enter the United States, period, until the president decides otherwise.
Well, so we've talked about our enemies, and we do have a few, as we've noted just in our short talk here. There are plenty that are wanting to get into the country to do us harm, just like they did in 9/11. But there's also this other thing, two other things, I guess, and they're epidemic things. The first one is infectious disease, and the second is the opioid crisis. Talk about those two things in terms of national security.
Okay, well, in terms of national security, first of all, you have a number of diseases which have been largely eliminated here in the United States, in Europe, in Canada, and in Korea and Japan, and most of China, that ultimately still persist in the so-called developing world. As strange as it may seem, in Mexico, this includes things like bubonic plague, not just polio, not just measles, not just typhoid, meningitis, all these other things, but really terrible diseases that we're not prepared to defeat here inside the United States. For some reason, the Center for Disease Control is not talking about it. I suspect that must be by design. I know that we've got 2,000 people at least in quarantine right now. But we were very, very careful through most of our history to keep people out that we knew were deathly ill. And today you absolutely cannot enter Korea or Japan or China if anyone thinks that you're ill at all, because there, of course, the potential for these diseases to spread, given the density of the population, is enormous. So that's the first thing. I think it's also important for people to understand when they talk about this massive influx of potential unskilled labor into the United States, that just this year alone, 5,900 stores, retail stores and businesses in the United States have closed. That's more than went bankrupt or went out of business last year. Think about the numbers of jobs that have been lost as a result of that. So we're not in a robust economy that could absorb these people in any way, shape, or form.
Well, you know, when you talk about things like bubonic plague, you know, that seems like a 200 years ago disease, something that, you know, kind of went the way of smallpox, and yet you're saying it's kind of on our border and could be coming in. When you talk about 2,000 people being quarantined, is it for that kind of disease? What diseases are we quarantining right now?
Well, the diseases that I listed have been mentioned, but right now it's very difficult to find out exactly what the people have who are in quarantine, and I suspect that's by design. I mean, no one wants to panic the American population, but Americans should be damn concerned about this, because you're talking school children in the United States of tender age who are at risk if these people are simply allowed to move into the population. And then, of course, you've got this other old problem that we thought we had largely gotten rid of, or at least brought under control, and that's HIV. Some of your listeners will remember the Mariel boat lift that came to us thanks to President Carter from Cuba. And they brought, in addition to tens of thousands of people who were ill with various diseases, lots of criminals. But one of the things that several thousand people brought to the United States from Cuba at that point was HIV. And we had a full-blown AIDS epidemic that took us years to finally bring under control. We don't know whether or not people coming into the country at this point are HIV positive because we've stopped testing for it. President Obama directed that stop. And so we don't know, again, of those who are actually slipping through, how many of them are actually HIV positive.
So this political correctness that we've got ourselves mired in could be the death of us, literally, couldn't it?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is where political correctness makes absolutely no sense.
Absolutely none. I wanted to talk a little bit about drug trafficking and sex trafficking. There seems to be a whole illegal cartel situation going on that just moves pretty much freely across our borders all the time.
Well, we know that on average of the women that come north out of Mexico, that roughly 80% of them, ages 12 to 50, are raped. That is despicable. It's appalling, and it should stop. But we have no control south of the border. Remember, there is no rule of law south of the border. I mean, if you sit down and talk to people that have come up here legally from Mexico or El Salvador or Nicaragua or these places, they will be very straightforward with you. They will tell you what those societies are like. There's a reason why most of these so-called migrants live in fear of the police. They expect the police in the United States to treat them the way they're treated at home, which means they'll be raped, they'll be brutalized, abused, they'll be robbed and assaulted. This is a large catastrophe for us. And when you talk about the drug trafficking, I think the president mentioned the 50, 60,000 Americans last year who died of opioid addiction. Once again, that's probably the tip of the iceberg. We don't know how many people are ultimately dying of drug overdoses from various kinds of drugs that come in through this border. And part of, one of the things that I thought was so interesting is to listen to the opponents say, well, look at all the drugs that we stopped at the legal crossing points. And that's not as much as you say. Well, that's what we know about. There are vast areas of that border. If you've been down to New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, Southern California, there are many, many areas that the Border Patrol cannot cover. They don't have the agents, and adding more agents won't help. They're already overwhelmed at the legal crossing points because we've decided to take seriously this ridiculous assertion that these people are here for asylum. No, they're not. They're coming up here to exploit our social welfare system and to become voters. And we know who they're being brought in to vote for.
Well, it's a terrible situation. I'm glad that our president is starting to address it, and I'm glad that you're here to explain some of this to us. We have to take a short break now. We're coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and AM/FM 24/7. You can also watch us on the AUN TV network. We've been talking with Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who is a decorated combat veteran, the author of 5 books and a PhD, and he's an expert on organizational design and grand strategy. He's been talking to us about the border, national security crisis, and medical emergency from migrant caravans on our southern border. We'll be right back after this short message.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America. And get this, did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Thank you for staying with us. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host today is Sharon Angle, and our guest is Colonel Douglas Macgregor, retired, a decorated combat veteran, author of 5 books, and he's widely recognized as an organization expert on organizational design and grand strategy. Colonel Macgregor, thank you for holding through that break, but more importantly, thank you for your service to our country, sir.
Oh, sure. No thanks necessary.
You know, Colonel, over 75,000 illegals are at the borders in February of 2019. 1 million illegals will be apprehended at the borders in 2019. How is this not an emergency? I don't understand.
Well, we've got a couple of problems, Rick. Let's be frank. There are lots of Americans in the United States who live remote from these problems. I mean, if you go down to New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, Southern California, people will be very frank with you. They will tell you the horror stories associated with the people coming across, the damage they do. And remember, we have lots of Americans who own land along the border, and they have been victims of this sort of illegal migration into the United States for many years. It's just gotten consistently worse because the left in this country, the politicians on the left, have sent a clear message. By all means, come north. If you come north, we'll get you in. If you come here, we'll take care of you. We'll set you up, and we'll find a way for you to vote as soon as possible in the next election. Wow. That's the problem. On the one hand, complacency, admittedly, but on the other hand, large numbers of people who see this as a way to permanently destroy the value of American citizenship and, to be blunt with you, the value of an American vote.
Who are those people?
Well, they're on the left. Everyone from Bernie Sanders to Ocasio-Cortez to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, every one of them is involved in this process. This is their way of defeating any comers in perpetuity. In other words, this is the opportunity to build a human foundation of people coming in from the developing world, overwhelmingly from Latin America, but also, as Sharon and others have pointed out, coming in from Africa, the Near East, the Indian subcontinent. These are people that can become part of this foundation of voters that will give them a permanent majority. At which point in time, those of us Americans, I'm not talking about hyphenated Americans, just Americans, those of us who were born here and live here, have served in the armed forces, have worked hard, those that came here legally after many, many years of struggle, suddenly our votes are neutralized. We're neutralized. That's the problem. Because when that happens, we cease to be the American Republic.
Colonel, I actually think there are others other than the left who want to destroy our way of life, who want to destroy our culture, who want to destroy the United States. Let me explain where I'm coming from. I'm old enough to remember Nikita Khrushchev being in New York at the United Nations, banging his shoe on the table saying, "We will bury you." I remember that. I also remember back in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan wanted to put defensive missiles in Europe, demonstrations in Europe by a group called the Women on the Greenham Common, later finding out that was financed and instigated by the Soviet Union. Now we have a guy, Vladimir Putin, who is a former KGB officer, who I don't think has any great love for the United States, would love to return to the days of the Soviet Union. And I just wonder if there isn't a group, a foreign activity, that's also working with the left to destroy this country. Colonel, am I once again thinking too far outside this box?
Well, I think you probably are looking in the wrong direction. Our friend Putin has enough trouble at home right now. To make mischief over here is much tougher. The Chinese, on the other hand, are different. The Chinese, obviously, if they can bring in more and more Chinese into the United States that can then infiltrate and work in our businesses, and particularly in federal offices. All you have to do is take a trip to the Pentagon or the State Department, and you will find Chinese citizens who are IT experts working for the United States government. And then everyone stands around and expresses shock and disbelief that somehow or another our secret plans, our technologies are being stolen. I think that's more of a problem. But the largest problem of all is really a network of people like George Soros, who are committed Marxists, who see the destruction of the United States and of Western Europe as a means to an end, of creating what they think will be this global society and the planet. It's really a pathway to universal poverty and despair for everyone, but they believe firmly that if they can overwhelm the West, overwhelm North America, that then they can ultimately dominate the world and dominate our societies and turn us into a true Marxist paradise. That simply means where everyone is equally poor. Right. So I think George Soros is a much more viable source for what you're describing than Mr. Putin.
Well, does his aims sound very similar to the aims of Nikita Khrushchev in the Soviet Union?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Your points are totally valid. Mr. Putin is like so many people in the United States that are extremely wealthy. They can afford to be communists. The rest of us are
not so much.
Target. Yeah, but he can afford that, and he's been pushing that for many, many years. He's a big advocate for the destruction of Israel. He wants the one-state solution, which means that for every Israeli citizen who is a Jew, you have 10 Arabs, at which point in time there's no longer any Israel. And the same thing is true here in the United States. Pretty soon there won't be very many Americans left inside the United States if they can ship in enough of these foreigners. And, of course, the big falsehood is, well, they'll all become Americans, just give them time. We don't see much evidence for that right now. In fact, we see the opposite. We see hardcore points of foreign culture that is hostile to the United States, hostile to our values, hostile to our way of life, forming across the country. And right now we know that people like Soros are financing buses and transportation to move people that come in this way into the United States very rapidly all over the country, making it that much difficult for us to round them up and expel them.
Why isn't he being investigated, Colonel? Why isn't, we've just went through this mess of investigations. They want to investigate Trump because, he might have been trying to build a hotel in Moscow. All these ridiculous side investigations. We need a true investigation, and that's into guys like George Soros.
I agree with you. No arguments from me.
Colonel, one other thing I wanted to ask you. We appreciate your time. If you have time for one more question, why isn't the president putting more pressure on Mexico, putting more pressure on Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica to keep their people home? Why isn't there more pressure? Why doesn't he cut off all funding? Why doesn't he shut the borders, as he's said? We send so much money south of our border. I would think that would give us some influence, Colonel.
Well, first of all, he's in the process of shutting off the foreign aid, which should have happened a long time ago.
Yes.
Because, let's be frank, all of these states south of the border are now organized crime states. The government is a facade, and the drug cartels are controlling everything, and that certainly includes Mexico. But there's another problem here, Rick, and this is a very important one for your listeners to understand. In 1917, we had an event in New Mexico where Pancho Villa and his rebellious army from Mexico actually attacked into the United States, killed some American citizens, including soldiers in the United States Army, burned a town, and then rode back into Mexico. The President of the United States responded by putting 100,000 National Guardsmen on the border to close it, and then sent 10,000 U.S. troops from the regular army into Mexico. Now, their stated goal was supposedly to find Pancho Villa, but their real mission was to drive the chaos, the criminality south and away from the American border. They spent several months down there until finally we felt that the border was secure, and then they came back and we withdrew the National Guardsmen, and the regular army went back to its usual mission on the border. I think at that point we knew we were Americans. We knew what it meant to be an American. We understood what the rule of law meant. We understood what damage to our population meant. We would not tolerate people who killed American citizens. I think President Trump has made the same kind of argument, but he has not gotten the support from the Congress. And the only way to explain some of that is, as you've said, there are people there who really want our country to fail. And then secondly, I think that we have people sitting on the Hill who are being paid, literally, by various foreign lobbies to oppose what is in the interest of the American people.
That's incredible. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, we want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Conservative Commandos. Please tell our audience how they could follow what you do.
Well, listen, I've got a website, and anybody that Googles my name, Douglas Macgregor, Colonel, will end up at the website. It's also called futuredevents.com. But I would tell your listeners, look, you really need to get mad as hell. You need to call congressmen and senators. You need to call the White House. You need to register your anger. That's the best way to make things happen. Americans are frustrated because they don't think they're represented in Washington. And you know, they're not wrong. But there's a way to correct that. You start calling. It scares these politicians. It scares them because they're right. They know that for every one person who calls, there are 10 more out there that agree with them. And if you want this to stop, if you want the border to be controlled, call up and say, why isn't the U.S. Army on the border? Why aren't we stopping this? That's how we win.
Colonel, let me just follow that up with this. This is the telephone number you can call to reach your member of the House of Representatives, to reach your senator. The number is 202-225-3121, 202-225-3121. They'll ask you your address so they can hook you up with your member, with your representation. Make that call. Tell these people, support the president, stop this emergency. But Colonel, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Take care and God bless.
Same to you. God bless America.
Amen to that. And you are listening and watching the Conservative Commandos radio show with Sharon Engel and yours truly, Rick Trader. Don't go away. Sharon and I will be back with more right after this break.
AM/FM 24/7 Roku channel broadcasts all of our shows on demand. To ensure reliability, we store and stream our content on the same servers as Netflix and Amazon. Our Roku channel is free to use, and anyone owning one of the more than 10 million Roku devices can watch our channel at no cost whatsoever. If you have a television show or are thinking about producing a show, you can be a part of AM/FM 24/7's Roku channel. Watch our great shows on your Roku device. It's free and more reliable than cable TV. Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is, there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to buyyourtimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. BuyYourTimeshare.com. That's BuyYourTimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes. Now, people say, why didn't you report it to the authorities? Well, they were the ones doing it.
The integrity of one man, one vote doesn't apply at the Texas state legislature. There is no way to know if your representatives are voting for themselves.
Department, a Republican, reaches back to vote for Democrat Oliveira. Democrat Matt Reynolds votes for Republican England.
2 out of 3 voters nationwide believe that voter fraud is a serious problem in the U.S. today.
The process is rigged.
Both sides of the aisle are guilty.
Florida now has to tell the Department of Justice whether the state will comply with DOJ's demand to stop purging thousands of people from its voter rolls.
We have the sloppiest election system of any industrialized democracy.
Philadelphia flagged 50,000 duplicate registrations, so just think how many more slipped through.
It's almost impossible to detect.
How do you get caught? You only get caught if you confess.
Election corruption is deeply embedded in America. Quote, election fraud is a crime that usually pays, unquote, writes Tracy Campbell in his book, Deliver the Vote, A History of Election Fraud, an American political tradition from 1742 to 2004. In 1742, the first Prime Minister of Britain in the American colonies, Robert Walpole, was forced to resign.
We have a right not to have our vote canceled out by someone who shouldn't be voting, someone who's an illegal alien, someone who's a felon not eligible to vote, someone who doesn't exist. If they vote, they cancel your vote out as much as if you're prevented from voting.
If this is going to be fixed, it's going to have to be a citizen effort. It comes down to, it's the same old question, if not now, when? If not us, then who?
This is huge. This is about the democracy and the principles of the United States of America. People say, but why you? Why you? Why? Well, why not? And if it starts with a fireman, if it starts with a sanitation worker, if it starts with a teacher or a nurse or a caretaker of the elderly, then so be it. It's got to start somewhere. But it's time we come together and fix this problem once and for all.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
Serious allegations of voter fraud. The claims raising questions about the
Commerce Secretary Ron Brown and 32 others were on a military plane that crashed today in a violent storm. There are no known survivors at this time.
The U.S. Army was funded by the evil entity.
I saw voter fraud with my own eyes.
To say that it doesn't exist is an outright lie.
The process is rigged.
People die and fall for the right time. It's too brutal.
So it's incredibly important now that we draw a line and say, not on our watch.
Well, Sharon, I want to thank you for sitting in today as my co-host. I know it was last minute for you. Dr. Nasser Sheikh took ill today, and you pinch hit at the very last moment. I want to thank you for joining me, Sharon. Please tell our audience how they could follow you when you're not here with me at Conservative Commandos.
Well, they can go to SharonAngle.com. SharonAngle.com, that's how they follow me. It's always a pleasure to be on this show. I learned so much from our guests. I am so grateful for Patrice Onwuka, who is a senior analyst at the Independent Women's Forum, talking to us about Jussie Smolette in his celebrity privilege. I was grateful to hear from Robert Knight about our Constitution and how the left is planning an end around the Electoral College. And people need to understand that's a good thing. The Electoral College protects us from the tyranny of the majority. And finally, Colonel Douglas Macgregor was on to talk about the real facts about national security. And in some ways, I think, Rick, you and I heard things we really didn't want to hear today about how truly dangerous this porous border is and how much is at stake right now.
All right. I'm going to be off tomorrow. Sharon, you're going to be filling in with George Landers. We've got another great show planned, including Dr. Michael Brown. He's going to be joining us to talk about his experience when he went to see the movie Unplanned and how that had affected him emotionally. But for right now, we are out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow on TV and on radio.